From a network of highly secure, top secret locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider Podcast. I am your host, Mike Finger, joined as always by Express News sports editor Nick Talbot and beat writers Tom Orsborn and Jeff McDonald. And this is going to be a revolutionary episode where we are going to talk about a team that is spinning its wheels, I suppose. I'm not sure what's new in Spurs land, either Tom or Jeff, that can make this a podcast that the world is going to be talking about all week.
They are who we thought they were.
Well, there you go. We'll see you next week. What I mean, if you're trying to encapsulate all that has happened with this team in the 7 days since the last time we recorded, is there anything?
I mean, they got their full boat back, but they're not winning games. They're not playing super well for 48 minutes. They're losing to teams that are largely better than them. I mean, yeah, kind of as you alluded to at the top, kind of they're spinning their wheels, and so are we. Kind of like we're talking about the same team that we've seen all year long, save for that stretch in December when they looked really, really good. You want to talk about what's going on in Spurs land. I don't know. I guess Dejounte Murray is something we could talk about, which we have before, but he's being that triple-double a night guy, where he's about to, as we're recording this, he's about to pass David Robinson as the franchise's all-time triple-double king, which is kind of crazy because we're talking about a 25-year-old point guard, really just now coming into his own compared to a Hall of Famer in David Robinson. So it's just a kind of a crazy stat. It was I think Tom and I both laughed last night talking to Doc Rivers before that game against Philadelphia, and we were the one. I think it was Tom that informed Doc Rivers that Dejounte was about to pass David. And Doc said, "Well, I'm gonna call David and tell him I don't think he was that good anymore. If Dejounte Murray is about to break his record." It was kind of a facetious joke on Doc's part. Doc was funny last night, but for bright spots, it's Dejounte.
The whole triple double thing is kind of
right.
I didn't even say what I was going to say, and you're already telling me I was right.
I know what you're going to say, and you're correct. But go ahead and say it.
This is a new era. Not only are you giving me credit for being right, you're giving me credit for being right before I'm even right. What I was going to say is triple doubles are just the best thing that's ever happened in the history of the game. That's not what I was going to say, but they're just kind of a weird, not glitchy, esoteric kind of just niche thing where they're cool, and they used to be more of a novelty, I think. Yes. But in the era, I don't know if the way the game has changed, where now you have Luka Doncic was having them every night, Russell Westbrook got them every night, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I remember I was in high school and saw David Robinson have a double one time and thought it was just one of the coolest things ever. And, he had a bunch of them, as we know, because he's the franchise leader. But even back then, it seemed like it was a rare thing. And now I guess there's more possessions per night in the NBA. There's more positionless basketball where a guy like Dejounte Murray is also crashing the boards. I just think they're absolutely interesting, but I'm not sure they're as big of a deal as they used to be. And I'm not lessening Dejounte's accomplishment because it's amazing that we just see him more and more these days. Yeah, you're correct.
And that's why we're not going to make the argument that Dejounte Murray is a better all-around basketball player than David Robinson.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the three-point shooting, creates more opportunities for guards to get boards. But David crunched the numbers this morning. All 14 of his triple doubles came in his first 5 seasons. And 9 of them were with 10 or more blocks, including the quadruple double. against the Detroit Pistons. If I remember correctly, Isaiah Thomas poo-pooed that accomplishment after the game, raising the ire of the Spurs and their fans. But he had, in his fifth season, he had 5 triple doubles, and 3 of those came with 10 or more assists. So the amazing thing about David was, just everything, every facet of the game, he could do well. I mean, he led the league in scoring once, rebounding once. And
what was the breakdown, Tom? What was the breakdown, Tom, on the third statistic for David between assists and blocks?
Yeah, nine of those were by blocks, including the triple double. Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb again and say that a triple double with 10 blocks is more impressive than the other. Like that's crazy.
He had a quadruple double once too, didn't he?
Yes. Quadruple double against the Pistons, and that's when
that's right. That's what you were just saying.
Well, that was memorable because Isaiah Thomas just blanked all over it after the game, and went down memory lane about how tough the Pistons were when they were the bad boys and so forth and so on. That's what I remember about that game. He was very ungracious in his comments afterward.
One thing that we could get into, and this we can talk more about Dejounte too, but Spurs fans love talking about the glory days, and a lot of times the glory days means Tim, Tony, and Manu. But we I think I'm guilty of this too. We underrate how special David Robinson was. And I know this has been mentioned by others before, but God, David would have been great in this era too. He was kind of ahead of his time in terms of just this super athletic big man. There weren't a lot of guys like him. I mean, his adversary during his heyday was Shaquille O'Neal, who was a completely different type of center. The triple doubles that he put up, and this is probably a good occasion to talk about them now that Dejounte is about to pass him up. But what an accomplishment each of those triple doubles were in that era of basketball when teams were winning with 85 points and stuff like that. I mean, that he was a hell of an athlete, and we still see him in his second row seat at the AT&T Center most nights, and he still looks like he can put up a double-double. Just a heck of a player, and I think. Go ahead.
Well, sometimes we see his sons in that second row seat, and they're as old now as David was when he was tearing up the lead for the Spurs, and it makes us all feel just ancient, I think.
Yeah. And Dejounte the other night, I asked him about him approaching David and being in the same breath as that, a member of the 75th anniversary team, Hall of Famer, yada, yada, yada. And Dejounte's reply was, but I bet he won. And to Dejounte's point, the Spurs were 12-2 whenever Big Dave had a triple-double.
That makes sense.
Of course, he had a much better supporting cast. That goes without saying.
Not for all of it.
Not for all of it.
Yes. He had a better supporting cast, but there weren't. You have Terry Cummings, Sean Elliott, I guess, are the two guys who were usually his best second player before Tim came around, right? Mm-hmm. The Spurs probably don't have that yet, but I mean, it's like David was the leader of that team for a pretty significant stretch. And, again, this is not knocking Dejounte Murray, but I think a team back then led by David Robinson could do more with a so-so supporting cast than like a Dejounte Murray can. And that's not just disparaging Dejounte. It's just David Robinson's one of the best players in NBA history. So to put it all on his supporting cast, saying he won because he had better teammates, I'm not sure that's completely fair of David, because I think David would have won a lot of games no matter who his supporting cast was.
That's true, but Dejounte is being a little hard. If he had a better supporting cast, they'd be winning, of course, with his triple doubles.
Sure.
Yeah, your point is
there's shades of gray.
Yeah.
Shades.
Well,
go ahead.
We can't blame Bryn Forbes anymore.
Yeah, good segue. Yeah. I guess that's the thing. Everyone, that's probably the most interesting thing that took place last week, and
it's not that interesting.
Well, it heightened the anticipation of Thad Young being traded. Dealt also.
I believe that happened in the 18 hour gap between us recording this and before it hitting and between it hitting the airwaves. However, it hits the public.
Are there airwaves? Is that how it works?
I think it goes on the airwaves. I mentioned during the recording of that podcast, we were talking about the Thad Young trade, and I asked if Bryn Forbes was available, and Jeff McDonald said sure. Mm-hmm. And before we hit the airwaves, Bryn Forbes was a member of the Denver Nuggets. Juancho Hernan Gomez was a member of the San Antonio Spurs. Who knows for how long? But I guess you can run down that transaction, either Jeff or Tom.
It's the trade that's going to shake up the Western Conference race, I think.
Uh-huh.
This is where the whole turnaround happens. You mean
for the Nuggets or for the Spurs?
Well, for the Spurs. I mean, the Nuggets are the Nuggets. They'll be fine. But the Spurs, all they were missing, as I looked at this roster before the start of the season, I was like, it's pretty good. There's some good young talent on it. But the one thing this roster is missing is a Hernan Gomez. And the Spurs got one of them. There's only two in the league. Spurs got one of them. So I think this is where the turnaround happens. Wow. I don't know. They should try, but they might have to trade their Hernan Gomez for another team's Hernan Gomez, and then you're still left with one Hernan Gomez.
And we're back to the beginning and spinning wheels.
The
point of that trade was what
draft pick and money.
Yes.
And we were kind of joking. We did the math. The Ginobili twins will be 18 in 2028 when that pick comes due. So maybe the Spurs can on one of them.
The pick, that second round pick right now is 12 years old. So, and sure, that's probably worth it. To get them. This is the team that is in a situation where finances matter. And, I think they netted $2 million out of the deal. That's nothing to sniff at. Bryn Forbes was not part of the future. You get a 12-year-old and $2 million. That's probably not a terrible return. And you get a Hernan Gomez. So that's where they are.
It's one of the best midseason trades they've ever made.
It's in the top. It's in the top 5 this millennium, right?
Yeah, it's in the top 2 since 2014. I don't know. Brian Wright's getting crazy. That's 2 years in a row that they've made an in-season trade. Do you remember last year's?
Marquise Chris.
I mean, look at that one. That one also changed the direction of the franchise for forever.
There's still the trade deadline is February 10th, I believe. I still think that they're going to be looking to move Thad Young. Maybe Juancho is part of something. I don't think they can both be traded in the same deal, but
that is correct.
That's something they will. That's something they will be looking for, and it's probably the same type of deal. Either helping out the finances or some kind of draft pick that can be used within the next decade or so. It's not going to be a earth-shattering deal of any kind, but there's a chance the local Cagers are not done wheeling and dealing. We did kind of get away from Jeff's proposed Dejounte topic. Is there anything that can be added to what Murray is doing? And I guess looking forward to the All-Star game, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that his odds of being added to the All-Star team were pretty long. I think that they're improving, not only because of the way he's playing, but because of just how the rest of the league is sorting out injury wise. Damian Lillard is not going to be playing. I don't think you're going to get Anthony Davis or Paul George back in time to play. There could be some spots. I'm still not sure his odds are better than a coin flip, but there's a chance he could get in there, and that would be sort of cool for him, I guess.
One thought I had this week watching the Spurs games, they played Oklahoma City. And this is just the thought I had. Playing Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City has a rising young star called Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I remember I kind of thought if you had said last year at this time that Dejounte Murray would have a better all-star case than SGA, that would really be something. Like that would be Murray, Dejounte making a pretty big leap. And so I think if he makes the team or doesn't, I think that's kind of a good measurement as to the sort of company he's jumped up ahead of. Because I thought SGA was on track to be like the next in the next tier of point guards that would be fighting for all-star bursts, and he's having a fine year. But I mean, in my opinion, I think Dejounte has got a much better case than he does, and that's nothing against Gilgeous-Alexander. I just think it's testament to how far Murray's come since this time last season.
That's an excellent point, and I think that's
Thank you. What is going on in this podcast today?
I think that's a fair barometer, a fair comparison for Dejounte in terms of, the best guy, a young guy on a rebuilding team. It's not like one has a vastly superior supporting cast to the other. They're both sort of asked to do similar things, and I think you're right. Dejounte has had a better year than he has, and that's a significant step forward for him in terms of handicapping whether or not he does make the All-Star team. We have to remember, first of all, the reserves are going to be, he's not going to be a starter. The reserves are going to be picked by the coaches. And sitting next to a friend of the podcast, Mark Stein, the other day, and Jeff, you probably already knew this, but wanted to make sure the coaches who pick the reserves are just picking for their own conference. So in other words, like Dejounte had 2 really good games against the Brooklyn Nets, one in Brooklyn and then one in San Antonio. Like him impressing Steve Nash really does not earn him any All-Star votes. Steve Nash is not going to vote for Western Conference backups. So it's like that's who he has to win over, is the other coaches in the Western Conference. And I think there's a chance. And Dejounte will never admit it, but I'm sure he'd get a thrill out of that. He plays well against good competition. I think he'd love to be part of that experience and take a little satisfaction in how far he's come over the past few years. And I think it'd be a cool thing.
Well, how many guards do you think will wind up on the team representing the Western Conference?
See, I think that that will determine everything, because if it's just 6, he's probably not going to make it. But if there can be a 7th, he's got a great chance.
Like just for
he's got a great chance to be 7th.
Just for the fun exercise, here are the top 10 vote getters in the Western Conference guard pool. And obviously this isn't the be all end all. This is the fan voting, but this is kind of an idea of the pool he's got to overcome to get in. Obviously Steph Curry and John Morant are going to start. As far as the reserves go, he's not going to beat out Luka. For a reserve, he'll beat out Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson hasn't played basically all season. Devin Booker, don't think he's going to beat out Devin Booker. Maybe this is an arguable one, or maybe it's not. Would the coaches vote him over Russell Westbrook? I think maybe that would.
Yes. Not to step on your toes here, but here are what I think are the slam dunk top 6.
Okay.
Steph Curry, Ja Morant, Luka Doncic, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, and Chris Paul.
Okay.
I don't think he beats any of those 6, right?
Right.
But then beyond that, it's kind of open. Like Lillard's not around anymore, so that's Like he's not going to get. Then you get to like Anthony Edwards. Is he a guard or is he a forward?
Well, he's listed as a guard, so he's the other guy in the top 10 as far as the fan voting goes. Is Anthony Edwards, and you mentioned David Lillard. So yeah, You're right. It gets interesting if there's 7 guards. It gets really interesting if any of these guards have to drop out for any reason. Which I mean, in this day and age, is something that could definitely happen. So
certainly so. And you're looking at 7 guards. Who's the front court players who can make it? The West front court is not the strongest it has been in years. So I think we have a strong bet on getting 7 guards.
My front court slam dunks: LeBron James, the Joker, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. Those are like 4 for sure. For sure, those 4 are going to make it. Anthony Davis and Paul George aren't going to play. Then, I think Draymond probably gets invited by the coaches because, even though his stats aren't impressive, he's just sort of earned that. And that's 5. I can't see the coaches not bringing Draymond Green. That's 5. And then there's a list of possible 6. This is where that last spot is open. It's either the 7th guard or a 6th front court player along the lines of Andrew Wiggins, DeAndre Ayton, Brandon Ingram, those type of guys who are all having really good years for teams. So Dejounte's got a chance, but it's not automatic by any means, even though I think he probably does merit a shot.
You see who was the leading vote getter among Eastern Conference guards?
DeMar DeRozan.
It's our old buddy, DeMar DeRozan.
He'll be here next week. This week. Oh, yes, Friday.
This Friday. Injury-ravaged Bulls. He'll be the pretty much lone do-it-all guy. They're missing half their team.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we could also – I sort of am loath to admit this on a Spurs Insider podcast, but I do admit I'm sort of Patty Mills'd out, after spending much of my summer in Japan and then going to Brooklyn and then coming here. That Patty Mills and Greg Popovich have had, by my estimation, 15 emotional hugs since his departure from the Spurs. But
those are just the ones you've seen.
Yeah, that was kind of cool to see the reception that both Patty and LaMarcus got at the AT&T Center the other night, last Friday before that game. I think it meant that Jeff talked to Patty out at TMI that morning. Patty and LaMarcus both talked to us at the game that night. I think it meant a lot to him. LaMarcus brought his teenage son into his availability after the game, which is cool. I think people underestimate how much LaMarcus really did enjoy his time in San Antonio. And so I got some. I thought that was cool to see LaMarcus back and kind of just getting his moment.
What I thought was interesting from LaMarcus's comment was kind of contrasting, the comeback to San Antonio, the return to San Antonio with, earlier in his career returning to Portland. That fan base booed him for years when he came back, just for years, mercilessly, and it was kind of understood at the time, but it was even though the departure from San Antonio was something he facilitated. He left in the middle of the season. I think it was nice to see the fans welcome him back and give him that embrace, because he was an important. It's unfortunate for his career that he won a lot of games here, especially early, especially when Kawhi was still here, but they didn't have the kind of championship level success that maybe people expected, maybe LaMarcus expected. When he signed with the Spurs, but he was an important part of the program. And just, again, he'll probably until the end of time will go down as the biggest free agent signing in Spurs franchise history. So that's something, and I'm glad the fans were there to give him his due.
On the list of what might have been in this franchise history, a lot of times you think about the Kawhi, Zaza Pachulia interaction that postseason at Golden State, and how the Spurs, even though they were underdogs in that series, if you talk to the people around the Spurs, they were convinced they could have won that series. I mean, Kawhi was playing at an elite level. They were ahead in that game, as we all know, by 25 points in game one at Golden State before that injury happened. Well, the moment that could have lived forever leading up to that was how they got to Golden State when Kawhi was hurt and LaMarcus had to be the man in that closeout game against Houston. And that might have been one of the top 2 or 3 LaMarcus Aldridge San Antonio performances in his tenure here, when he just completely played James Harden in that game, closed out the Rockets. And if that leads to a series where the Spurs beat the Warriors, like that's going to be remembered forever. And now it's sort of forgotten. But LaMarcus definitely had his moments.
Yeah, it's almost like some fans remember LaMarcus did not play well in that Golden State series after Kawhi went out, and it's like people put more stock in that than what he did to get him there, or whatever.
And his job, he was signed to be not, to use a Greg Popovich term, the head of the snake, but to be part of a group, part of a Kawhi sidekick, a Tim sidekick, whatever. And he was really good at that. And he was not built to be the go-to guy, the guy that leads the whole franchise to a championship. I think everyone can sort of acknowledge that. So yes, when he got put in that position against the Warriors during that series, it did not go well, but to be fair to him, that's not what he was meant to be.
Yeah. So, he just looking back, I just looked back at Basketball Reference. He had 34 points on 16 of 26 and 12 rebounds in that closeout win over Houston. Then he has 28 points against the Warriors in game one. Yeah. And after that, it's 8, 18, and 8. But of course, everything changed when Kawhi's out. I mean, they were able to key on him, and it's really unfair to knock him for that whole sequence. Two All-Star bursts, part of a Western Conference Finals team. I'm glad the fans honored him. He's a good dude, and as Pop pointed out, he did a lot of stuff in the community, boys and girls clubs, parks and recreation, and he did it quietly. And I'm glad he got that ovation.
I think that was important to both Patty and LaMarcus. And I realize a lot of players across the league do stuff in the community, and that's kind of part of the gig. That's what you do. But that was those moments were a big part of the video that was shown by the Spurs. I think they did a great job with it. And I think it was important to both Patty and LaMarcus that it wasn't just basketball highlights in there. It was them being out and about with Girls and Boys Club and Patty's Indigenous Night and that type of stuff. So that was good to see. And as James Harden noted in his post-game comments, when somebody asked him about LaMarcus and Patty's tribute, he said, I liked it better than my video. And again, Houston didn't quite show him the love that San Antonio showed LaMarcus and Patty after leaving him under different circumstances. I guess that's about it. I would remind everyone to go to expressnews.com, subscribe to the Spurs Nation newsletter. It's a great deal. Anything else to add, my fellow panelists?
Could be getting Zach Collins back this week.
Zach Collins could be coming back.
Coming back to the NBA, making his Spurs debut.
That's something to look forward to. Other than that, there could be more wheels spinning, but it's better than wheels breaking down. And I would just urge everyone, as always, to take care of each other and keep it real.